you want to be successful? Do you want to grow your business? Do you want to dominate the day? Then you're going to need big skip energy. Larry, welcome back to the Big Skip Energy podcast, man.
Hey, what's going on? So I got round 2 on this. So
round 2.
Either you felt sorry for me or there was something I said that actually triggered something. So
no, the first part was so bad. I had to get you back on to do it again.
Just to make up for it.
That's right. Just to make up.
Well, no, man. I wasn't here the first time.
That is true. That's true. We listen. Hey, not only did Larry and I's show get great feedback, but now that Kayla's here, we're going to get even better feedback.
Yeah, there we go.
Teamwork.
So, yeah. Larry, obviously, we had you on fairly recently, but you've had a lot of things going on here recently, man. You got big news with your book. You got lots of stuff. Tell a little bit about yourself, who you are for my listeners that don't know, and share a little bit about what's been going on with you.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. There's actually been a lot going on. I'll give you the quick flyover. This might be the fastest I ever do this flyover, but for people who don't know, I'll just give them a quick backstory. By the way, I'm just a big believer in this. You don't know somebody until you know their backstory and where they came from and how they got from where they're at to where they're at today. But I spent 30 years in the field, hard-nosed office technology sales. So highly commoditized, very laggard in nature. I sold copiers my whole entire career, dog eat dog in Los Angeles. So I held about every sales position imaginable. I was business partners in a copier dealership. When that didn't work out, I sold out and I went to go work for a Fortune 500 Japanese OEM. And I rose from number 18 to number 2 by just staying true to the philosophies and selling from the heart. Well, at 50 years old, I found myself with having to go find a job. It was the first time ever that I was reduction in force out of a job. Yeah. And I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I could have done one of two things. I could have gone back to what I know, which was selling copiers, or I could have jumped into what I didn't know. And with a very loving wife and a very supportive, really good friend who's now my business podcast and business partner, Daryl Amy, they go, hey, you got to jump into the deep end and you got to coach and train salespeople on what made you. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it my way. And I brought heart, sincerity, and substance to the forefront, started this thing from scratch, not a single listener, not a single article I've ever written. I never publicly spoke in front of anyone, never coached sales teams before, but I knew I had a message. And over the past 8 years, the podcast has been going 6.5. The book came out 5 years ago, just a few days ago. I've turned selling from the heart into what I feel is a movement. It's a necessary movement around bringing heart, sincerity, being really true to yourself. Here at Selling from the Heart, we call it giving a rip. And I work with sales leaders and salespeople on how to build trust and credibility in the sales world by leveraging the foundation of selling from the heart. So how was that?
That was great. It's perfect.
Spectacular.
Spectacular. Oh, yes.
I just loved hearing that, where you started and why you're doing what you're doing now. And to me, that's where the whole story lies.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our sponsors on the Selling from the Heart podcast is the Y Institute. And the Y Institute was founded by Dr. Gary Sanchez, who happens to be friends with Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why. So Simon had given Gary the blessing on, hey, run with the Y Institute and all that. Now Gary Sanchez and Dan Dominguez is his chief sales officer, really good friends of ours. They're deeply integrated into Selling from the Heart. That the reason why I bring this up is in order to bring your authentic self to the forefront, you really got to know your why. And it's not just why you're doing what you're doing. It's your internal, it's your operating system. And what was really interesting, Kayla, is when I unpacked my why operating system, it was like getting slapped across the face because I really hadn't gone that deep into really uncovering my why, my how, and my what. And this is before we agreed to agree and partner with the Y Institute, but I took the assessment. It took like 5 minutes. And when I read it, I go, oh my gosh, this has been me the whole time. And my why is, I believe success happens when I contribute to a greater cause. I'm a big contributor. That's the way I was in the sales world. And that's why I started Selling for the Heart, because I wanted to contribute to a greater cause and elevate the sales profession. But how I do this is by making things clear and understandable. I'm a clarify guy. I like to keep things clear, concise. I deliver a message with conviction because what I ultimately bring is trusting relationships to the forefront. That was me in the copier channel. That's me in selling from the heart. And once you understand that, then you can look at the subtitle of my book and go, that's how your authentic self sells you. And people got to be willing to go down that road to really throw the mirror in front of their face and look inward. And there's not a lot of people in sales that really look inward. They want to chase all the outer success. And I'm all about the outer success. But if you want to achieve even greater success, you got to look inside. Right? And when you unpack your why, watch what starts to happen.
That is not easy to do. And people, I think, of course, a lot of people say, oh yeah, I want to do it. A few more will get into it, right? Start doing a little bit, maybe scared, slam the door shut and not want to look back in there again. But very few people are really willing to do the self-assessment and start down the road of really trying to figure that out. I can't say that I've done everything that I can do to figure out why I do what I do every day. I think I do, but you know what? You can always peel back in there a layer. It's tough. It's hard. That's why people don't do it.
It's hard work. I always said, man, you got to be willing to open up the cupboard and look inside. And if you're not willing to look in the cupboard and look inside, you can never become even greater than you already are. And I only know this because I'm telling you, I learned more in my 50s than I did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s combined. So as we're sitting here recording this, I'll be 59 in a couple months. And I've learned more about myself in my 50s than I ever did in my 20s, 30s, and 40s combined, because at 50, I had a life altering moment and I was left without having a job and I had to figure out what to do. But in bringing selling from the heart to the forefront, I had to look inward. I really had to go deep to find out what made me tick. Why was I doing all these things in the copier channel that came easy and natural for me? Is once I started to unpack my why, I go, holy smokes, this is good stuff. And a lot of people just don't want to go down that road, maybe because they're scared. They have no idea what they'll uncover, but you can't bring your authentic self to the forefront unless you're willing to do the work.
That's right.
And there's a lot of talk, but the talk's got to match the walk.
I think, and Kayla, you're going to talk about this. She is great at empathy. She connects very well with her prospects or customers on a very deep level. And it becomes very easily for her, but I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, obviously, but it's not something that is still without work. So like, what are some of the things, Larry, that you recommend people do to try and, frankly, to genuinely deepen their connection with the people that they help every day in sales?
Are you talking about how can they better connect to their clients and their future clients?
Well,
is that where you're going?
Yeah. Somebody that says, you know what, I do a pretty good job, but I wish I could get down to a deeper level with them. What are some things that you've seen that can help in that endeavor for salespeople to really try and, who want to connect more deeply, accomplish that task?
Oh, so this is good because I'm going to get there, but I'm going to just bring in the R word of the relationship word just for a moment, because if you ask anybody in sales, do they have a really good relationship with their clients or the people that happen to be on or inside their sales funnel? They'll go, of course. Yeah, I do. And I said, great. I'm not here to discredit you or disrespect anyone when I say this, but is the relationship that you think you have the same as what they think it is? And I'm going to stop there for a moment, because most relationships, and I speak from seeing this, I work with all kinds of different sales leaders and sales teams across multiple channels. And I see this play out, and I see it play out over and over again. Most relationships are at surface level. They leave the relationship right on the table. But if you want to deepen the relationship, if you really want to get to know somebody, you got to go below the surface. And so it's just simply as, and I'll ask people this, what are 3 things about your client personally and professionally? And what are 3 things they know about you personally and professionally? And the way you kickstart this is you have to be willing to go first.
Yeah.
You have to
show
be
some
willing.
vulnerability.
Yes. You have to be willing to give something that's close to you up. And I'm saying you got to keep your boundaries and all that. You're not going to like all of a sudden go into the deep, dark secrets of everything like that.
I hope not.
It's not like that, but it could be as simple as, hey, over the last couple of weeks, If I've enjoyed taking hikes on the weekend, we go to some of the local trails here in the city that I live in. Hey, I'm just curious, Skip. Do you ever hike? And if you do, what are some of your favorite hiking trails? There's nothing wrong with saying that. None whatsoever. Or you can say something like, hey, looking over the next 3 months, what are 3 things you're working on as it relates to self-improvement? And the only reason why I bring this up is I've been on a big, deep self-improvement journey. I enjoy listening to podcasts such as this. I love reading books such as this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, when it comes to self-development, what's that mean to you?
Yeah.
These are great ways to start deepening conversations and really getting a chance to get to know somebody.
You get to what matters at that point.
Yeah.
You know? The conversation. You're not just a person that's dealing with your mortgage. For me, I'm a human too, and I can relate to what you're going through. And like you said, I like saying go first, because then they're like, oh, Skip's a human. You can relate, and it opens a door for them to be a little bit more vulnerable with you too.
Okay, so just think about this. Think where trust and credibility sits in the sales world today. It's not very high. Unfortunately, it's low. Year after year, every research is out there, right? The sales profession ranks near the bottom when it comes to trust and credibility.
I think we're ahead of lawyers, though.
Quite possibly.
But not guaranteed.
I know we're ahead of politicians.
Oh,
but here's why, to me, I'm a big perception person. Perception's reality.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why I bring this up is I want your listeners and salespeople and sales leaders to really key in on this. Is some people may not buy into it, and that's quite all right. But perception's reality. The way that the general public perceives salespeople is not that great. So their barriers and their boundaries are already up already. They're going to only say a few things. They're going to be guarded and so forth. This is why it's mission critical. If you want to build a relationship with somebody, you have to build trust and credibility first. And what's really interesting about this is I will share, like when I work with sales teams or I get to do keynotes and all that, I'll just randomly just say, hey, listen, this just popped into my head. It's one or the other. You can't have both. You can either be liked and be friends, or you can be trusted and viewed as being credible. You can't have both. Which one do you want? And everyone always goes to trust and credibility. But in highly relational type sales channels, right? And you're in one in the mortgage industry as well, highly relational, is sometimes we get caught in the trap of, I got to be liked and I got to be friends. I totally understand it, totally get it. But if they don't trust you and they don't view you as being credible, how can they like you and view you as a friend? It just, it doesn't go together. So here's what I'd like for everyone to think about is the way you open up your conversations matter. The first 3 to 5 minutes of your conversation matters. Whether that be with somebody you've never spoken to before, or even how you open up the conversation with somebody who does know you. And if you can make somebody feel comfortable with you in the first 3 to 5 minutes, and I'll go on to say, if you make them feel so comfortable about you, they'll become comfortable enough to share what I call business secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And salespeople are not getting to business secret level because they're making it all about them. They talk way too much. They're not asking enough secondary and third level questions. They're not peeling this thing back, and they're not getting to what really matters. And what really matters is how comfortable can I make somebody feel about me in the very first couple minutes of that conversation. So comfortable that they'll start opening up and sharing things with me. Y'all get where I'm going with this?
Oh, 100%.
Do you think that people are too surface level? So like when I talk to a client, for example, do you feel that people are too like focused on the transaction, or are you saying we're not getting down to like, I want you to trust me and I want to make myself credible? What would you recommend? Because a lot of our listeners are in real estate. So what would you recommend at that level where you remain professional, but how do you open the door? What would you recommend? Or what are some things that you say or questions you ask?
So think about this. Use the word transactional as well. Is you can't, when you have a transactional conversation with somebody, when you're focused on, I got to make that sale and all that, I believe in my heart of hearts, you're replaceable. Transactional conversations are 100% replaceable because they will be replaced by somebody else who comes along who outsmarts you with a better transactional conversation. So if we zoom this into your space, into mortgage and buying a home, just think about all the stress and everything that goes through, whether you're buying a home or you're refinancing a home. It's one of the biggest decisions anyone will ever make. So it's really unpacking, right? It's unpacking the story behind the story. Hey, why are you going? Yeah, just understanding and write this world a whole lot better than I do. But it's like you're going from renting to buying your first house. Walk me through the story of that, right?
Yeah.
What's that look like? What's gotten to the point where you want to move from renting to buying a home? Walk me through that. What's the next couple years look like for you?
The more questions you ask, the more you learn. And one of the things that I learned is it's one thing to say, what's your budget? How much do you have for down payment? What city do you want to look in? But does anyone ever ask a client, what's your biggest fear with this? What are you most excited for? What made you decide to buy? And then they're like, I'm living with my in-laws. And I'll tell you what, like you really break down barriers when you ask questions aside from just the transactional things that every lender is going to ask you.
Yeah, that's sorry, Larry. That's the thing. Like, so many people are saying, "Was the future of the mortgage business or real estate? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be this?" I was like, no, but it's going to weed out the people that just sell on a transactional price-based basis, as opposed to people like Kayla who really get into it with the people and get to know them on a personal level, and that's the key.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And here at Selling from the Heart, we do a lot of coaching and training around the trust formula. Because I know where trust sits in the sales world, and we know this, it's really low. But if you want to build trust and you want to build credibility, what I'm about to share will play out. It's going to play out in the mortgage space like none other. And there's 4 components to building trust. This all plays out. And it's a simple math equation. I'll give you the math equation, then if you allow me to, I'll break down each one of them for your listeners. But this will play out in the mortgage industry like none other. First part of this is AR. So it's AR plus MV. So if y'all have grab a sheet of paper and a pen, if y'all are listening, you can jot it down. It's AR plus MV times IE times DH. And so I'll bust this down. The AR is authentic relationships. This is how many people know you. This is the who part of this. Authentic relationships are congruent relationships. The walk matches the talk. What do you really know about people? The MV part, I'm giving you all the high flyover on this, but the MV part of this is meaningful value. That's the what you know. That's 2 sides of the trust coin. If you want to build trust and credibility, you got to build genuine, authentic relationships, and you got to combine it with meaningful value is what you know. That's business smarts, business substance, business goods. But you got to be willing to educate. The only way to educate is you have to become educated, which means this is hyper focused right into the mortgage space is what do you know about your industry, right? You got to know something beyond your company and rate sheets and things like that. So if you can combine authentic relationships with meaningful value, that's 2 sides of the trust coin. If you really want to accelerate this like none other, the IE's inspirational experiences. This is how you show up. And this is where some people are going to have a hard time buying into this. How you show up is your responsibility. You're 100% responsible for how you show up. It's not your company. It's not your manager. It's your responsibility for how you show up. And then the last part of this is DH, and DH is disciplined habits. And that's how often are you engaging? If you remove disciplined habits out of all of this, you have a wobbly 3-legged chair. But discipline's the key to all of this. It's discipline and radical consistency. I do want to go back because I know Skip's in Savannah, Georgia right now. So I'm going to use somebody who's near and dear to me, and that's Jesse Cole from Savannah Bananas. He's built the Savannah Bananas into where they're at because it's fans first.
It's a national phenomenon because of that.
It's a national phenomenon because it's fans first. I'm going to tell everyone here, there's no real secret sauce to becoming successful in sales, though people are trying to find the quick tip and the hack and the secret sauce.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, how well are you building genuine, authentic relationships? What kind of meaningful value are you bringing to the table that's going to get somebody to open up? And then once they open, what kind of an experience are you providing to them that's inspirational? And some salespeople might be going, inspirational, where the heck are you going with this? But I believe that salespeople are leaders. Sales professional are leaders, and leaders inspire and influence. And I believe you can inspire and influence people in your industry to do things they didn't think they can do on their own.
It's funny you say that. Yeah. Mark Hunter says the definition of sales is helping people achieve things they didn't think were possible.
Yeah. And Mark's a dear friend of mine. And it's just, we have to think differently as salespeople. It's a never ending quest to become better and better, but it all starts with you. You got to be able to look in the mirror and have these mirror moments. And I've always said this, the mirror never lies. Only the person looking in the mirror lies. And you got to be willing to go deep. And if you're willing to go deep, watch what starts to happen. I've always said this, and until somebody can prove me wrong, is the inner work you do will fuel all the outer success you will have. And that all determines how well you build authentic relationships, bring meaningful value, and inspirational experience, and how disciplined you become with this.
Yeah.
And I'm sticking to it, Skip and Kayla.
I love it. I love it.
You're spot on with everything. And it's honestly like creating those relationships. You can be really good at making friends, but if you don't have the knowledge, like I can have a lot of great realtor friends, but if I don't have the knowledge and they don't trust me, I mean, your formula makes sense. And it's like, how do you become the trusted resource? How do you become the trusted advisor? And I think we've all had a manager or a supervisor where we felt that we could approach that person. We felt comfortable, and that opens a bridge to honesty.
Yeah.
So here's what's interesting is in the mortgage industry. I'm just going to go there, right? If you allow me to, you're in the people business. You're in the people business and you're in the relationship building business. Would y'all agree?
100%.
1,000%. Yeah.
100%. Same plays out in other channels as well. But if everyone who's listening or watching can buy into the fact you're in the people business and relationship building business, then what are you as an individual doing to develop your people skills and your relationship building skills? Regardless of where you're at in your career, whether you're just starting out and you're in your early 20s or you're in the twilight part of your career, we have to be working on a daily basis on our people skills and our relationship building skills. Especially if you all agree you're in that line of work. Yeah, the end result of what you might be doing is selling mortgages and helping people find their home or refinance their home. That's the end result of it. But you're in the people business and relationship building business, and you got to be working on those two things on a daily basis.
Yeah, because you're selling, we are helping people achieve their why. It's like, Kayla, what do you always say? You aren't helping somebody buy a home. You're helping do what?
Create generational wealth through home ownership, making their dreams come true, helping be a trusted advisor, all the things. I always think about when I talk to a client, it's like they can have this experience with anybody, right? There's a million lenders, but I want them to remember it and to feel good. We hear the horror stories of people buying a home and it's scary and it didn't close on time. I always tell my clients, you should enjoy this. You should enjoy the journey because it's your biggest purchase you'll ever make. And no one wants to have an icky feeling when they move into their home because it was so stressful during that process. But truthfully, we get to make people's dreams come true. Sometimes I think about it and I don't think about it as deep as I should. I'm like, I got to be part of that. And this should feel special. It should feel good.
We are trained as salespeople so often to find pain points, right? And there's something to that. But Larry, I'd like to hear your comments on this. I think you can get further by focusing on the positives and the pleasure points, what makes them feel good and be happy and see the outcomes and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting is there's not enough people. Thanks for asking. There's not enough people that uncover what their dreams, their goals, their visions, their aspirations are, because right. It's just the nature of the sales world, right? And I'm not saying all salespeople are like this, and I'm not saying all sales trainings are like this or all trainings like this. But quite often is we go to, what are your challenges? What are your pain points and all that? They may not even know. So if they don't know, how are you going to quote unquote extract it? But if you ask somebody, what are their dreams, their visions, their goals, their aspirations? Where do you see yourself a couple of years from now as it relates to home ownership? Anything like that, you're getting them to forward think, right? And I do know this, a lot of great leaders are visionary type people. You just have to help people cast some vision. What I want to play on something, if you'll allow me to, is a good mentor of mine is a guy by the name of Don Barden. Don Barden wrote the book, The Perfect Plan, and he's a behavioral economist by trade. One of the best books I've ever read. It's about he's done deep research and science into what make elite sales professionals so elite. But what was really interesting early on in the book, he starts bringing out some of his research, and this is going to play out in the mortgage industry like none other, is he went on to say this, is 10 minutes after you leave a conversation, 6% of the people will remember facts and figures. Think about how that plays out in your world with being numbers and rate driven and things like that. So when your conversations are solely focused on that, the minute you leave that conversation, they have remembered 6% of what you said. However, they will remember 100% of that conversation based on how you made them feel delivering those facts and figures.
Yeah. Why do people focus on price so much? Because sometimes that's all there is to focus on.
Right. Yeah. Here's the other thing. The reason why salespeople focus on it is because they allow it to happen.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why, because they aren't making the conversation about anything else. Oh, you know?
No. And here's what's interesting is, and I'm just going to poke the bear at this one, and I'll throw a stake in the ground on this, is the reason why they allow that to happen is because they may lack confidence in themselves. They may lack believability in their messaging, and they may have low self-worth. So if all three of those things are going on, then no wonder why they focus on price.
Yeah.
Think about that one.
And I don't think clients don't know what else to ask. They see these posts about what rates are doing, and that's all they hear. But when I ask a client, what do you expect from your home lender? What would you expect out of me if we got the opportunity to work together? And I said, how about I tell you what I would like to do for you and how I work? And then you can feel them kind of just like, oh, it's more than that. It's more than a number. It's more than a rate I'm chasing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to switch the conversation.
Yeah. And you gotta be willing to ask the questions that no one's asking. And that's why I'm a big believer in this. If you want to achieve the results that no one's achieving, you have to be willing to do the things no one's doing. And what no one's doing, or very few people in sales are doing, are asking questions that gets people to stop dead in their tracks and think. And when you can get somebody to think, and when somebody's thinking, because if you're looking at them, you can watch eye movement, or you can watch body language, or you can see their posture and things like that. But it could be something as simple as, right? So say someone's buying a home again. You can say something. I'm spitballing this, by the way, Skip and Kayla. So
you go right ahead, man.
You got to give me some credit on this one. Allow me some grace. You can say something like, you know what, Kayla, I realize, so this is your second home you're buying. You shared with me in our previous conversation that you've already purchased another home before. So this is your second home that you're buying and so forth. If I can just get you to put your thinking cap on for a moment, walk me through the experience that you had the very first time you bought your first home. What was the good? What was the bad? What was the ugly about this? How did it make you feel? Can you walk me through that? Would that be all right with you? Stop.
Yeah.
And it might be a pause, and it might be a painful pause, but you got to let the pause play out, because somebody will tell you. And then you got to intentionally listen. And then whatever you hear, you got to just keep asking the deeper questions and the deeper questions and the deeper questions. So when they share the good, expand upon it. When they share the bad, expand upon it. When they share the ugly, expand upon it. And you can say, what made that experience so ugly? What did it look like? Why was it so ugly? What led to those things happening? What were the factors behind that?
Yeah. See, it's funny you say that because there's a study, and people that have been in my trainings and stuff, they know that I reference it all the time. It was done a couple of years ago, but of the top 5 things that are most important to the American borrower, rate and closing costs were 3 and 4, not 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 was communication. 2 was the ability to do what was promised, was closing on time. Those things were up more than any of the numbers. That's what mattered the most. That backs up exactly what you're talking about.
So how about this? And this, if you want to build trust and you want to build credibility, why don't you just get this all out on the table in the very first conversation?
Exactly. Let's all show our cards, shall we?
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's nothing wrong with this. I don't believe there's a single script in your industry nor in anyone else's industry that's going to be the magic script to get you the magic answers. I just think you got to be real, you got to be relatable, and you got to be relevant.
That's what's
fun. You got to pay attention to how you make somebody feel, and you just got to give a rip.
Yeah, you actually have to give 2 shits about somebody else. Imagine that.
Yep. I'll give you a double high five on that one, Skip.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, Larry, I know that we're running short on time. Kayla, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
I don't have anything that I want to ask, but I want to comment on something that you had in your book. And it's something that, Skip, when I say this, you're like, Kayla, you use that all the time. But you had said something and it hit with me because I'm big on social media. I have a lot of social media. Why? It has it's always had this negative vibe for so many years of it's people with selfies or the odd guy with the video who doesn't know how to speak to the camera right. It's always had this kind of negative connotation around it, but it's evolved into something. And you've kind of helped me realize this, is that you had said content creates conversations, create relationships, create trust, creates opportunities, create sales. And I realized it was you that made me realize this, Larry, that I love social media because my contents are creating conversations. And those conversations are leading to, for example, I've never met Skip in real life ever. However, I probably talk to him more than most of the people that I know in my city. And it's because you don't have to sell yourself on social media, certainly, or push, but you can create content so people can learn to trust you and see who I am as a human to create those relationships. And that's what it's all about. So I had to thank you for having that detail in your book because it's really helped me.
No, you're welcome. Will you allow me just expand on this really quick before?
Oh yeah, man. Absolutely.
Thank you. And it's so interesting because I always ask salespeople, when it comes to prospecting, what are you prospecting for? And then the secondary part of this is, what are your struggles when it comes to prospecting? And you hear a wide variety of answers and so forth. And again, I'm just going to throw out my beliefs and my opinion on this. Is the hardest part I see for salespeople straight across the board, doesn't matter what industry they're in, is how do you open a conversation? In conversations nowadays, you have so many tools that are at your fingertips to help you open up conversations. And the use of social just happens to be one of them. All I just ask people is they just have to be really strategic with how they use this. And that just goes back to, I believe you're 100% responsible for how you show up. And I'll just kind of end with this is, does the outside version of you marry the inside version of you? What you're putting out there, does that marry when the camera goes off? Are they seeing the same person? And this is where I'll throw the stake in the ground and I will adamantly say, I seriously doubt the way a vast majority of the people portray them online as how they really are behind the scenes.
That's the downside of social media.
That's the downside of social media. Mm-hmm. But if you want to connect at rapid rates, is people can sniff this stuff out at rapid rates.
Now they can for sure.
They can sniff out the pretenders from the social Pied Vipers. They can sniff all of this out, and they can sniff out, hey, this person's, that's why I pay attention to how I show up, how often I show up, how I engage, how I want to make somebody feel. Just because there's a barrier between Kayla, you, Skip, and myself, doesn't mean I can't have a conversation with you. I've never met Kayla and I've never met you, Skip, face to face, but we have conversations. And sometimes the conversations go off in different directions. But conversations today start in so many different ways. All I'd ask people to think about before we split is how are you making people feel in these conversations determines what will happen next.
Yep. See, I wish we had another hour to spend. We can keep diving into this. But Larry, man, thank you so much. Now,
oh, you're welcome.
For my listeners that don't know how to get a hold of you or where to find you, give me your shameless plug.
If you want to find out anything you want to find out about myself or Selling from the Heart, just go to sellingfromtheheart.net. For those who haven't grabbed a copy of the book, you can go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book. I'd be more than happy to send you a signed copy. And then for all your podcast listeners who want to add something else to their listening, you can find Selling from the Heart on any podcast platform, or you can watch us on YouTube.
Yep. Great show too. So,
Thank you,
man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming back on for round 2. There's going to be a round 3 eventually. So
all you got to do is ask. When you shot me a message, I go, you put a smile on my face. I go, okay, I'll come back for round 2.
That's right, man. Thank you again. And listen, you have a great rest of your week. All right.
Yeah, you as well.